Doreen had been waiting for the call. She had only placed the card in the newsagents only a few hours earlier. Doreen could not believe her luck that PJ, a single man, had been the first to call. She hadn't even had to turn anyone away. She prepared her guest's room for his arrival. I eventually found the address. The directions I was given were correct, but the house was well out of the way of the main road down a country lane. I knocked on the door and waited. 30 seconds later a female opened the door. "You must be PJ," said the blonde woman dressed in a blue skirt and white blouse. "Yes," I said as she invited me into the house and into the living room. The house was very large and well looked after. The woman introduced herself as Doreen and invited me to sit down on the sofa. She double-checked my details about my reasons for staying the night. I confirmed that the reason I was traveling alone was that I had no family and few friends. Doreen offered me a drink and I accepted a cold drink of orange juice. As I drank my drink, Doreen spoke of her rules for the house, stating that she had the final say in meals and bedtimes. What the hell was she going on about? I thought to myself as I finished my drink. Still, I was only staying one night anyway and I didn't really care what types of rules she had. Doreen took my glass from me and took it out to the kitchen. "The drug will start to take effect soon," she thought to herself as she picked up her handbag from the side table in the kitchen and returned with it to the front room. I was starting to feel very hot and uncomfortable. When I tried to stand, I fell to the floor. Doreen was standing over me. "Are you okay?" she asked, as I looked up at her. I tried to get up but became weaker and weaker by the second. I was on my back and by now my limbs felt so heavy I could not lift them. I tried to talk to Doreen but my tongue did not function properly and only mumbled jargon escaped my lips. I even started to dribble. Doreen opened her handbag and removed a packet of tissues. She opened the packet and pulled 4 tissues from the pack. She knelt next to me. "Do not be scared, sweetheart, everything is going to be just fine," she said as she wiped my chin and then stuffed the tissues into my mouth, effectively gagging me. I tried to push the tissues from my mouth with my tongue but could not even manage that. Doreen stood up and left the room. I was scared. I didn't know this woman, no one knew that I was here and I was unable to move a muscle. Doreen had gone to her room. She was so excited that the moment had finally come for her to become a mommy. She changed from her skirt and blouse into her blue nurse's uniform. She also tied her rubber apron on as she knew that it would be needed very shortly. She left the room and went into PJ's room and picked up the bag near the door and returned downstairs. As she entered the room, she looked down at me and smiled at what she thought was a helpless man. She walked beside me so that I could see her and started to speak. "I have given you something, darling, which has removed all of your control over your muscles for 30 minutes or so. You will stay with me until I decide that you can leave. Do you understand?" I could only look at my kidnapper as she spoke to me. I suddenly felt the urge to wee, but as with all of my other muscles, I could not hold the urge and began to uncontrollably wet myself. Doreen noticed immediately that a dark area had appeared on my jeans. "Naughty baby, you couldn't even wait until mommy had diapered you." Doreen knelt down beside me and opened the bag she had brought down from upstairs. She placed a pair of latex gloves on, took off my shoes and socks, and then emptied the contents of the bag. I stared in disbelief as Doreen removed several bottles of liquid from the bag, an adult-sized diaper and plastic pants, a pile of tissues, and finally a pair of scissors. My eyes widened when Doreen picked up the scissors. She proceeded to cut away my jeans, t-shirt, and finally my boxer shorts. Doreen stood up and took the clothing to the kitchen. She returned with a bowl of warm soapy water and flannel. Doreen then proceeded to clean me. "We don't want baby to be smelly, do we?" she said as she started to wash me. She then picked up one of the bottles from the bag and opened it. She sprayed it onto me and foam appeared. As Doreen removed the tissues in my mouth, she said, "The foam I have just put on you will remove your bodily hair. You see, you will be my baby while you stay here, and babies don't have body hair, do they?" Doreen used the flannel to remove the foam. She took great delight in showing me my hair in the flannel once she had finished. Tears began to form in my eyes as the full extent of my predicament became apparent. Doreen noticed the tears streaming down my face. "Do not cry, honey," she said as she took some tissues from the pile and dried my eyes. Doreen took the bowl to the kitchen to dispose of the hair and water. While she was gone, I started to regain slight movement in his limbs and tongue. Again tears streamed down my face. What was in store for me next? Doreen returned. She took something from her handbag and lifted my legs. She slipped the diaper under my bottom. She took some tissues from the pile and put them between them before lowering my bottom onto the diaper. Doreen then pulled the plastic pants over my legs and up over the diaper. She tapped my penis through the diaper and smiled at me as she wiped the tears again with some tissues and put them into her pocket. "I think it's time for a nap, sweetie, while I moves you to your room," Doreen said with a smile. I started to mumble and move on the floor as my limbs started to return to use. Doreen picked up one of the bottles on the floor and unscrewed it. She picked up the remaining pile of tissues and applied the liquid to them. "This will send you to sleep, darling, while I settles you into your nursery." Doreen sat on my chest and looked into my eyes. "Good boy," was all she said before clamping the tissues to my face. The tissues covered my mouth and nose and I had no choice but to breathe in the liquid that Doreen had placed on them. "Good baby," Doreen said as I took my first breath. The drug hit me hard and I started to struggle as my limbs used all of the energy available to them. I tried to hold my breath as long as I could. Doreen could see this. "There's no point in holding your breath, sweetheart. The chloroform will put you to sleep eventually. Just breathe it in and it will be over very soon." I could hold my breath no longer and took another breath. The room started to spin. I tried to concentrate on Doreen's eyes and not on the drug putting me into bye-bye land. I moaned into the tissues that Doreen held firmly to my nose and mouth. "Hush baby hush," was the only response Doreen gave. My eyes started to roll as I started to lose consciousness. "That's right baby, sleepy baby, hush hush." I was asleep. Doreen held the tissues over my mouth and nose for a few more seconds just to make sure before removing them and standing up. She looked down at her handiwork. She was so happy that the kidnapping had gone so well. Now it was time to move her new baby to his nursery. Doreen retrieved a wheelchair from the kitchen and after some pushing and pulling were able to move me into it. The hard work was now done, after the compensation that she had received after her operation a few years ago, which left her unable to have a baby. Doreen had a lift installed into the house. She had been planning this plot for some time and the lift was to enable the transportation of her new charge upstairs and down without the problem of negotiating stairs. Doreen pushed the wheelchair to the lift and then once on the upper level to the nursery. She wasted no time in moving me from the wheelchair onto the bed located in the room. Doreen used the straps on the bed to secure me to it. She took an oversized dummy from the side cabinet and pushed it into my sleeping mouth and secured it behind my head. She then picked up a blindfold from the cabinet and secured it over my closed eyes. Doreen exited the nursery and went to her bedroom. Once there, she stripped to her underwear and switched on the television in the room. She used the remote control to select the channel and an image of her new charge appeared on the screen. Doreen had fitted CCTV into the nursery so that she could watch her baby from the comfort of her bedroom. During the night I woke. It took me some time to realize where I was. However, as I tried to move and the restraints stopped me, I soon realized the reality of my situation. I realized that I was blindfolded and gagged. I tried to push the gag out with my tongue, but as it was strapped in, it did not budge. I did not know whether it was still daytime or night. I must have laid there for hours, then suddenly I felt a rumble in my bowels. The suppositories were starting to do their job, just as Doreen had promised. It was not long after the rumble that I began to uncontrollably fill the diaper. The mess was gross and the warmth in my diaper was unbearable, but I had no choice but to bear it. I started to cry. It must have been a few more hours before I heard movement in the house. By now my diaper was a cold mess and very damp. I heard a shower running and about 30 minutes later I heard the door to the room I was in open. I was still crying and was unable to stop. I turned my head as Doreen entered. "Morning, sleepyhead, did you have a good night's sleep?" I violently pulled against my bonds and moaned into my gag. Now, sweetie, calm down," Doreen said as I felt her feel my diaper. "Has baby messed his diaper? Would he like mommy to change him?" she asked as she removed my blindfold. It took a few seconds for my eyes to become used to the light. I then looked at Doreen. You've been crying, sweetie, haven't you?" Doreen said. She took some tissues from her nurse's apron pocket and put them to my nose. I moaned into my tissues as she held them there. "The substance that you drank last night will make you very emotional. Now blow your nose for mommy," Doreen said sternly. I refused and shook my head. Doreen pinched the tissues to my nose and held them for a few seconds, sternly saying, "Blow for mommy." I had no choice as I would not be able to breathe if I disobeyed her command. "Good baby," she said as she wiped my nose with the tissues and disposed of them in the bin. Doreen then opened a drawer and removed a pile of tissues and a bottle of chloroform. She applied the clear liquid to the tissues. "I am not going to put you to sleep, darling, just relax you while I change your diaper." Doreen removed the tissue. I immediately tried to protest but was cut short as the tissues were applied over my mouth and nose. Doreen was true to her word. I moaned and tried to turn away from the substance-filled tissues. She held them firmly until I became sleepy and could not struggle any longer. She removed the tissues and put them on the cabinet beside the bed, and put on a pair of latex gloves. She quickly removed the plastic pants and diaper. "Pooey, smelly baby," she said as the smell hit the room. I could only watch on as she got to work cleaning my areas with baby wipes and then washed them with a flannel. Once I was clean, she disposed of her gloves and came close to my face and looked at me in the eyes. "Good baby," she said and kissed me. Doreen then went to another drawer in the room and removed a fresh diaper and plastic pants. She also retrieved a pile of tissues from the first drawer where she had previously obtained the chloroform from. She placed the items onto my chest and diapered me as she had done the previous night. She lifted my legs and slipped the diaper under my bottom, took some tissues from the pile and parted my buttocks, and shoved them between them before lowering my bottom onto the diaper. Doreen then pulled the plastic pants over my legs and up over the diaper.